Our first presentation is Natakanu, an Indigenous-led open-source peer-to-peer software project. We are joined today by Mauve Signweaver, ArielBeaudoin-Lambert, Genevieve Sioui, Mailys Flamand and Stéphane Nepton. They will retell the story of the creation of the Natakanu Project and how open source, peer-to-peer architecture and Indigenous leadership has allowed them to claim and create space for Indigenous artists and to continue to challenge relationships with the colonial GLAM institutions. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm Genevieve. I work at Concordia University, which is located in Montreal, Canada, and I'm in charge of Indigenous community engagement at the university. I'm also a member of the Huron-Wendat Nation. Today, I will be presenting with my collaborators our project, which is called Natakanu. But before we do so, I would like to also do a bit of a territorial acknowledgement. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So we would like to acknowledge that we're on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganyan-Gehaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we are gathering for us here in Montreal today. So Montreal, or Tiohtià:ke, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations, and today it's home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. So we respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future, and in our ongoing relationship with Indigenous and other people within the Montreal community. So this is a land acknowledgement that has been produced by Concordia University by a group called the Indigenous Directions, in which I'm a member. Today, for our presentation, we will hopefully demonstrate how and why institutional and community collaboration with the help of open and free technologies can contribute to decolonization and to Indigenous cultural sovereignty. Next slide, please. We will each introduce ourselves before we speak, but this is a clip of us, the Natakanu team, and I will now pass it on to Ariel, who will talk about the Natakanu Project.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Genevieve, for this introduction. So I'm ArielBeaudoin-Lambert. I'm working at Wapikoni Mobile as a technical coordinator for the 3 past years. So yeah, I'm here to give you a bit of a background about Natakanu and a little bit more of the why behind the project, And the main question I wanted to address to give a little bit of a kind of a big picture about what it came up about is that idea, that question that always struck me when I was working with First Nations all around Canada, and that I want to explore with you is why and what are the interests for Indigenous organization to use free and open peer-to-peer software or technologies. And I think the main reason that we use those technologies, and in the case of Natakanu, that we went through that pipeline of project, is because those, as you know, those technologies are built on values of accessibility, transparency, and most importantly, ownership. And I think that those values create a space from which narrative sovereignty is possible. And that was very the focus of our project, was creating a space for narrative sovereignty, but in cyberspace. So for us, tech in itself is a cultural object. It's an expression of your way of existing. And Indigenous lead initiatives or artists should have a possibility to define their own way of existing in technology or with technology and within cyberspace. So I think that we went with those technologies and the peer-to-peer architecture because it was giving us the space for this narrative sovereignty to be possible. And with those tools, we built, as I would call it, a simple file sharing transfer app as it is. So it's just a space where people can connect with each other on the peer-to-peer web and just start a conversation on how they can exchange files and see what they can do online and offline. So those kind of software let them tell their own stories, share their own data, and there's no one else like listening on the other end. It's always peer-to-peer, so that says it all. And that really respect the intellectual property of the people that are using it. And in indigenous situation, this is always, and working with institutions that are non-indigenous, this is always a challenge, respecting intellectual property. And that was kind of a center point for Natakanu. It was building a file sharing platform for people to be able to share what they want, when they want, with whom they want, and having always the full control of who's on the other end and who are they talking to. So Wapikoni is doing that same thing with cinema for like 15 years ago. So we were like, let's do that same thing, but with technologies and with digital media. So that's a little bit how the idea of Natakanu went about. And it was really about creating some collaboration with other indigenous initiatives that you're going to see, and Stéphane is going to talk a bit more about UHU Labos Nomades. It was creating some dots with them to see if is there any kind of same ground that we can cover with this kind of tool where people can just share easily files within an indigenous community or a workshop or whatever activities they're going through as artists or organization. And also in the same path, this initiative that we built also addressed the kind of the digital divide or the inequality access to infrastructure in general in different indigenous communities around Canada and the world, the access to internet infrastructure, computers, and any kind of material that you can build on. With Natakanu, the goal was to be able to run that software with just like an old cheap router and 2 computers, and then you good to go, you can share, you know. So that was a bit the idea behind the project. And I'm going to leave Genevieve talk a bit more about the roles of the institution beyond this movement of sovereignty and decolonization.
Thank you, Ariel. So yeah, before we start speaking about like the tech aspect of our project, I want to just maybe take a bit of a step back and touch on like the role of institutions in supporting projects like this. So I came on board at the beginning of the project, and as I said, I worked for a university. So at Concordia, we have made a commitment to really be like an active citizen and be engaged in communities. And I think that that's one like key important element to the positionality that I had in this project. And so for us, like being a part of community means that we're opening our doors and we have dedicated positions within the university, such as mine, who are there to really support like community engaged work. And we also engage, like on the screen, you're seeing different ways to be engaged. Like we do offer financial support or even like just our own presence to a project. But we try to engage in various ways. And one really important aspect of the way that we do our engagement in our institution is by always thinking about the process of decolonization. So we have like committed to really address the colonial past of the institution and to address the power imbalances and see how we can really value Indigenous knowledges and methodologies and encourage projects that are Indigenous-led and really make space for Indigenous people at the university. So with these sort of commitments in mind, this is like the way that I have been approaching this project, is to be an active member of this team, of like really participating in all of the different steps of the project and making the resources of the university available, which means like if we need to hold an event to test out the platform, then we can do so on campus and have access to material and make sure that the partners can really benefit from the resources that an institution like a university have. And a lot of time institutions like university have a lot of means. So I think it's a part of this too, of sharing these resources. And so I think maybe I will stop there. Sorry, I'm losing my line of my thoughts. But I'll just say that if you want to know more a bit about the way that we have been engaging in decolonization, at the end of the presentation, there'll be some references so you can get in touch with me. And then I will pass it on to Mailys, who will tell you more specifically about the objectives of the platform and the processes behind Natakanu.
Hi, my name is Mailys. I'm from the nation Netskamek and Innu. It's from Manawan and Mashtuyats. I also work for Nelly Montreal as a cultural animator. I'm also a collaborator for this project. So the objective of the platform is a safe space for sharing with your peers. So the platform participants and registrants will be able to share with each other in a complete safety. And you can share any type of data with no one listening. So it means that it can be audio or video files, even JPEG and PDF if it's an illustration project. And the access with or without internet, because in communities, connection can be a major issue. And the ability to auto-determine your own circle of sharing. So it's like being part of a virtual group, but with the real people in front of their screen. And end-to-end encryption, it means that all data inside the app is protected and encrypted to reinforce the idea of a safe space. And the solution to the unequal access to internet, computers, materials for indigenous communities. So the platform is created for that. So I will let my colleague Mauve to explain the creation of the platform, the tech stuff. But first, before I will talk about the visual aspect. So the visual aspect of the software of the platform, we find a cool color palette with a little touch of warm color if we look at the beige color. So we want the color to represent the nature and then our environment side that we find very well in the communities. So if we think of the camps in the forest and the prospector tents, so I wanted the platform to represent the young indigenous people from each nation and also elders. It's Mauve.
Thank you, Mailys. So as we said, we wanted to talk a bit about how the tech behind the Natakanu app works. So given our objectives, we went with an architecture that would keep data locally and would share it directly between peers. So what that is called these days is local first software, and it looks something like this. So over here, we have 3 cool friends that want to connect to each other. And as you can see, there's no central place that they're connecting through. They're all exchanging data directly with each other. The same way that we would exchange our oral histories or information from person to person. As well, what's interesting is that if one of the emojis, say, goes to sleep and isn't available anymore, the conversation can keep going without having to have any downtime. And as well, we can see this nerd emoji down here. Oh, oops. They're not even connected to anyone, but it doesn't matter because everything works locally first on their network. It works offline, and if somebody has a copy of some information, that's available to them regardless of whether the peer that actually created that information is online or not. Oops, my slides messed up. Oh no. Technical issues. Gotta love them. All right, sorry about that. So this is also in contrast to kind of the standard for software out there using the cloud or centralized systems. So generally in these systems, all your interactions are mediated through some sort of server on the internet. If you want to connect to anybody, you need to go through a server that's probably somewhere in the US. And that means that the company that runs the servers effectively controls all of your data, and its uptime is what actually determines whether your data is available or not. So say that cloud is unavailable for some reason. So for instance, either their servers are shut down or you don't have access to internet or anything else. Everybody is kind of out of luck. They can't connect to each other, even though they're both right there. So with the peer-to-peer foundations in Natakanu, we can be more resilient to these sort of failure cases, while also providing users with more privacy, since by default, the only ones that can access data is themselves and only the people that they connect to directly. So one other thing about the technology that I really enjoyed was the actual process of developing it. So we went through cycles where we'd start about talking about what we wanted and having my colleagues in Montreal kind of like set the path of what was actually needed, thinking about how we can actually implement what was necessary, sitting down and coding thing, and then kind of verifying with everyone that stuff was working and getting feedback. So this really helped validate some ideas and really helped see where things were too complicated or where things could be simplified early on. So with kind of the end result of our project was you only needed like 3 clicks to create an account, create a folder to share your information, put some data, and then someone could just see it on another computer without having any sort of account management, without having to set up third-party service providers or password backups or anything. Just kind of like set it up and have it work for everyone. So this was possible thanks to open source tools like the Electron JavaScript framework for building the actual user interface, and GitHub for tracking the history of the software and collaborating with people amongst the team, and as well existing open source protocols. Specifically, we use the Hypercore protocol for the actual peer-to-peer connections, which kind of let us build on existing foundations that worked with what we wanted to do. So one of the other advantages was this was a case where the Indigenous community has an actual need where having things being more local, having things be in the control of the actual people creating data, that's an actual use case that people need. And peer-to-peer and local first tech happens to be in a position where that's exactly what it delivers by default. And in fact, it makes it hard to not do that. When you kind of build your foundations on local first and connecting people directly to each other, it's a lot harder for someone to aggregate all of the data in one place or kind of prevent people from being in control of their own communities. So with that in mind, Stéphane is going to talk about what this actually meant in practice after we had the app in people's hands.
Thank you, Mauve. Kwekwe Pipan Shinikahun. Hi, everyone. I'm Stéphane Nepton from Innu Abenaki Nation and co-founder with my partner, Andrea Gonzalez of UHU Labos Nomades. In this topic, I will explain the importance and the reason why we created the Natakanu Platform Project for democratizing and decolonizing the First Nation art with open source tool made by Aboriginal artists for Aboriginal artists. UHU Labos Nomades is an Aboriginal initiative whose vision is to support the academic perseverance of First Nation youth by digital art workshop. We propose to create an essential bridge between the elders and the present generation, and between the land and the community, through art workshop for decolonizing Aboriginal art. Second slide, please. Project Matakan. The Matakan site is an Atikamekw Nation intergenerational cultural transmission camp. The site is about 1 hour from Manawan community, really deep in the land, accessible only by boat. We were invited to give a digital workshop in a place where there's no electricity, only a few hours a day by solar panel, and no network, no Wi-Fi. We use only our cell phone camera and a freeware for our activities. It was a challenge. I can say that. In this week, we made some great workshops, such as digital photography, light painting, and we experimented volumetric video capture with an old Xbox Kinect camera during an elder's speech about the territory and his secret. Second slide, please. But the main workshop we gave was the photogrammetry of a mini canoe we made with birch bark. We learned first how to get the resource in the wood. We bring all what we need, and the elders show us how in the past we made the real canoe. We made a mini version of the real one, and after that, we made a photogrammetry of the object we just created. The photogrammetry is a technique for creating 3D digital object from picture. So we took a bunch of pictures of the canoe from all its angles, and with the help from the artificial intelligence from a freeware called Zephyr 3DF, we create a digital canoe. So you can see it on the slide. This 3D object was integrated into a video game environment, but anyway, this 3D asset can be used for a movie, augmented reality, virtual reality, any digital project. This workshop is especially symbolic for museum context. We can digitally reappropriate our cultural object by photogrammetry. Next slide, please. The Natakanu Project is a response to a real problem that we had during our workshop in the land, where connectivity and the internet was inaccessible. Is an incredible technological advance that allow art to be shared between Aboriginal artists. It leads to decolonization, enhancement, and protection of the heritage of the first people. In the future, we would like to facilitate sharing a bigger project for more specific asset format, by example, for volumetric filming and 3D assets. We would like to be able to preview 3D mesh into the platform like Sketchfab. Eventually, we would like to have a communication space by chatting or video. And finally, why not having our own space for displaying art piece from the creator directly from the platform. So, so that's it for me. Thank you very much. Appreciate a lot. And Ariel, is your turn.
Ariel, sorry to interrupt, but you're muted.
My gosh, sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so I was saying, thank you really much, Stéphane, for giving us the real kind of implementation on the ground of the software of Natakanu. And as I was saying when I was muted, is that it's really cool to see that one kind of initiatives kind of brought to the table different partners. So UHU Labos Nomades, Wapikoni Mobile, le bureau de Concordia University, Mailys Flamand as an artist and as a web designer, Mauve, and this group really came about with this idea of collaboration, and we were really kind of focused on that, and we were able to have a software that was kind of going through those goals and making it easier for our activities on the land. And we can now say that this software and this open source peer-to-peer protocols have really helped us doing our way with art, with our workshops and everything. And there's kind of so much thing that now we can see that we can do with those same kind of tools, so those same technologies. So Stéphane talked really about what he envisioned that we can do with this, and there's so much more things that we can do. So, and one of the first that we were thinking off the bat, and also like speaking just before that about, is that making this tool and the peer-to-peer web just easier for people to kind of be able to play around with, you know, just having a door to enter with it, and just be able to tweak something and do some practical coding and practical stuff with something that is already existent within the same mind frame of connecting people directly within one of each other and being kind of direct contact. But there's so much more than just a file transfer application that we can do with this. And really what we want is give those tech primitive to people so they can find what they want to build with, because that's really the question. And after that, we can also look up to local mesh network, you know, so we can also see if there's a way to bridge those two technologies and not just be within a local approach, but also a local in the way we built the actual network. And that could enable people to have their own workshop, for people to make their own local first thing, as I was saying. And we will now want to like work with different other indigenous organizations to see if this platform can fit other needs. You know, is there anything in the gaming industry, in the video film production, as Wapikoni is? For us, there are really a lot more things that we can do, and we're just now open for seeing what's the future. And so I'm really glad that we were invited just to present this. So thank you very much once again. And Mo, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, thanks to everyone. And you can connect with us also on to see on our Facebook, to the Natakanu page. Also on the page of UHU Labos Nomades, we have our GitHub, as Mauve said, so Wapikoni Technique. You can go check that out. Wapikoni Mobile, we are touring always now virtually for now with COVID stuff, but go check us out. And also Concordia Office Community Engagement and Mauve Software were kind of the people behind that. So that's all for us. Really, another thank you. And if there's anyone on the team who wants to address something else, I'll let you go. But for me, I'll leave you with that. Thanks, everyone. Miigwech, and see you soon, I hope.
How are we all feeling? Everyone done? That was so fantastic, team. That was just amazing way to kick off. I'm so inspired. I was, really gravitated towards that institutions just embracing the decolonization process and that being used as a framework. I'd really love to see more of that happening here.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that there are going to be so many questions over in Venulus. I'm going to let you go. So sorry, Ariel.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just saying thank you once again.
Wonderful. All right. So we'll all jump into Venulus to have a little Q&A session. Up next, we have Mark Eaton. That presentation will kick off at 11:40. So jump into Venulus, lots of Q&A. There's just so many questions and so much stuff to unpack here. It's just wonderful. I think we'll also share some of those links that you have mentioned throughout the presentation. So see you all in Venulus, and we'll see you back here at 11:40 for the next presentation.